people from day to day using parables. They were a story with a hidden message. And he would tell the story, and if you were not part of his disciples, you would not understand what he was speaking. He told a story about a farmer that went out and sowed seed in a field. And he told a story about a man that had a field. An enemy came and put weeds in his field. And his crop was damaged by the weeds that the enemy had sowed. If you were just listening, standing in an audience, what is he talking about? Why is he telling a story about a farmer? Why is he telling a story about weeds? We don't understand. Well, this is very interesting, this prophet from Galilee who teaches these stories about farmers and weeds. But if you were a disciple, you would come to Jesus and you would say, Lord, explain to us the parable. Tell us what you mean by this parable of the farmer and the parable of the soil and the parable of the wheat and the tares. What do you mean by that, Lord? We don't get it. And he would explain to them what the message was behind the story, the parable of the sower. And this one is very short. In Matthew chapter 13 and verse 31, another parable put he forth unto them, saying, the kingdom of heaven is like to a grain of mustard seed, which a man took and sowed in his field, which indeed is the least of all seeds, but when it is grown, it is the greatest among herbs, and became a tree, so that the birds of the air come and nest in the branches of it. So, it would be like going to school, and the teacher says, oh, there's a seed that is a mustard seed, and you plant it, and it grows up into a big plant, and the birds come and make nests. And why is the teacher about God's Word talking about a mustard plant? We know about those things. I've got one in my garden. You know, it grows to a big plant, 15 feet tall. And in the fall, its branches become stiff. And the birds come and they make nests in it. They sit in the tree. And it started out a very tiny little seed. Why is he telling a story about a mustard seed? Well, there is a message behind that mustard seed. But a bigger question might be, why did Jesus tell the story about the mustard seed and the leaven? The leaven is yeast. The woman takes a lump of dough, making bread, and she puts leaven in it, and then the whole thing rises, and it becomes a leavened loaf of bread. And those two parables were very similar. Why did he tell those stories? I mean, everybody knows that you cook and you put yeast in bread and it rises and you cook it. And so what's the story? Why is he telling these common things that people already know anyway? You know, they've got a mustard plant in their garden. Their wife makes bread every day or maybe once a week. And the farmers sow seed every spring. So it's not, none of this is new. Why is he telling these things? And there is a message about the kingdom of heaven. He opens his message by saying, hear the parable of the mustard seed, hear the parable of the leaven, and hear the parable of the sower. And so that it's like it too. So there's more than just the story. Everybody knows the story anyway. But there's a message behind the story. The kingdom of heaven in some way is like this farmer, is like this mustard seed, is like the leaven. And the reason that Jesus seems to have spoken the parable of the mustard seed and the parable of the leaven is that these parables are more encouraging. He had, in the same chapter 13, Matthew, he had already talked about the parable of the four soils, where the farmer sowed and some of it fell on the wayside, some in the good soil, some in the rocky soil, some in the thorny soil. And it was, you know, every seed that the farmer sowed did not come up. Much of the seed was lost.